The Hive Cafe Solidarity Co-op buzzed with the sound of around 90 people on Tuesday night. The audience packed rows in all corners to hear stories of organizing and community building. The night was part of an annual series put on through the Concordia University School of Community and Public Affairs. Hannah Sharafati was one of the students who organized the event, called Rise of the Populist Right, charting a strategy for the left.
The reason that I like community work is because community organizations often focus on the people that the government doesn't focus on.
She and her classmates were tasked with event organizing around populism, which, according to Merriam-Webster, is a political movement that claims to represent common people. She says her team wanted to hear community-centered voices to define what that means. To do that, they united panelists from across cities and sectors. Becca Wilgosh moderated the panel with Nora Loreto, Mostafa Heneway, Terri Givens, and Maya Menezes. They came together to talk about what community building means, leftist strategies, common and pressing grassroots issues, and some effective responses to them.
I've been writing on the radical right since the 1990s. And as the oldest person on the panel, I have different experiences around that, but really I try, my main goal is to put things in context.
That's Terri Givens, a McGill University political science professor and author. She says populism, or working to address common grassroots issues, must include systemic context and two-way empathy in order for large masses to understand each other amongst political impasses. For example, Givens wrote the 2021 book Radical Empathy, Finding a Path to Bridging Racial Divides. She writes about her own experiences with systemic racism and offers her own anecdotes to call attention to understanding internal biases, oppression, and systemic roots of the widespread issues important to people today.
It's really an opportunity to be vulnerable in my own story and get people to put themselves in my shoes, but also to encourage them to practice empathy in a way that allows them to, for example, to connect with some of the people we were talking about today who get pulled into these radical or far-right circles. Can we have empathy for them in a way that, and I want to mention that, empathy is not absolution. It doesn't mean we have to agree with people, but it does mean that we have to understand that they do have challenges in their own lives that are impacting the way that they're responding.
Panelists shared that time is of the essence to make broad-based solutions to widespread problems, from the climate crisis, systemic racism, healthcare, to fair labor.
By practicing empathy, we can hopefully model it in a way that gets people to say, hey, maybe I should listen to what this person has to say, rather than just completely shutting down.
Mostafa Heneway is a community organizer with the Immigrant Workers Center. Heneway says that he wants to see large, efficient organizing structures that focus on the needs of communities that have been, quote, neglected, unquote, by all politics in general, like precarious migrant workers, Indigenous communities, and women.
We need to think about the conjuncture that we are in Quebec, that it is unique and it's special, that creates its own challenges and its own dynamics. Right, in terms of race, in terms of Islamophobia, in terms of this renewed nationalism that is creating a lot more confusion, and it sort of has a super majority, right? And it's not like a fringe movement because it's different and it's differently organized, right?
He says organizing around what matters most to people can be applied locally, regionally, and beyond.
Inflation, Ukraine, climate crisis, perpetual war, and all of it affects everybody in their day-to-day. That's the interesting part. These aren't abstract things. The question of power has to come back into the discussion. I think that's what feeds a lot of conspiracy theories. That's what feeds the far-right populism.
Panelist Nora Loreto is a writer and activist based in Quebec City.
I think talking about the rise of the far right and how we deal with it on the left is it's a critical issue. It's a critical question.
She says she wants to see more solidarity work between people concerned with the same issues, but might not have the same organizational structures.
But I think what is most important is that if we're going to organize across communities, across issues or whatever, then we need to have those coalitions that are able to bring many different kinds of structures together and put people in a room who would maybe never have otherwise been together.
Maya Menezes is a climate campaigner and organizer based in Toronto, Treaty 13. She echoed calls for more patience within community work.
When we talk about, populism being framed as a really bad thing. We're talking about right-wing extremism, not the narrative practice that is populist messaging. And I think that's something the left really needs to learn how to do better. And people are learning how to do it better, which is why I wanted to bring hopefulness. There's a lot of thought, a lot of strategy, a lot of movement building happening around building more inclusive and more broad-based movements that leave a wider net to bring people in and meet people where they're at, not meet them in the middle. So not sacrificing radical demands, but actually bringing people into transformative demands, but meeting them where they're at in their lives and what they have access to. And that includes language.
She says one example of this could be for organizers focused on austerity to explain exactly what it could mean to a community if municipal money could be funneled from policing to something else.
We have to do the hard work of meaning making with the public. We can't just throw, I mean, we can and we do, throw really big world-changing demands into the air and expect people to get all the way there on their own. I think the hard work of organizing in community is going to meet people and walking with them in their political understanding.
She says community work is not the same as meeting around the same politics.
A lot of people, and not necessarily the panelists, but like a lot of people that come together for events like this aren't doing organizing work and instead are in scenes, like exciting lefty scenes where people are performing their political values instead of actually getting involved with communities. And those are the folks that are most disenfranchised. And I really get that because that sounds incredibly demoralizing. And I think I misunderstand a lot of the time when people say, like, I'm in a leftist space or I'm in a collective, that means they're doing community work. And oftentimes that's not the case. And I'm just thinking a lot about, like, how we break that up so people understand that that's actually not what community work is and that there are a lot of community organizations that want to do stuff.
After 2.5 hours, panelists packed up. This event is part of a series of student-led events facilitated by the SCPA department this semester.
We have to really put forward a strong sense of solidarity with migrants right now, especially in our local context in Quebec, whether they be temporary foreign workers or asylum seekers or sans-papiers, because I think this is going to be a fault line that will give confidence to a lot of people who've had to live in the shadows. It will be a fault line for the far right. It will be a fault line for CAC.
I like the term radical hope. That's going to be my new term because I think radical hope is so important.
Yeah, do something. Just do something, do anything. Don't be shy, don't be afraid to say the wrong thing. Find your movement and have fun because we need you and we need your creativity.
The most important thing is to get involved, is to join as many communities as you can, as many associations as you can, even if they're not perfect, even if they have a lot to do to become better. What you need to do is to put your foot through the door, take that first step, and then everything else will follow.
Sarah Jesmer, Montreal.